So we're going to now discuss solutions to the education crisis that we talked about. And I'd like to start with international educational consultant Bill Daggett. I heard him yesterday on what are the 3 things that we can do to improve Texas public education. He said one thing, higher standards than the rest of the country. Right now, in Texas, your standards are too low compared to other states. Number 2, find best practices out there and share them with the rest of the state. And number 3, you need sustained professional development across the state. But I'd like to start with Todd Litton, Citizen Schools, on how you're working to improve the situation.
Well, one thing I'd love to point out was just kind of with both young women here, we heard the stories they told, and you could really hear both the relevance piece, really seeing how that affected your future and everything, and also the relationship piece. And I think Chairman Eisler earlier had mentioned the new 3 R's, kind of rigor, relevance, and relationships. And so one of the things that I think you need to be able to do that, one of the things we do at Citizen Schools is work on expanding the time that our children have to really learn throughout the day. And I think we've seen here in Houston really the impact that great charter schools like KIPP and YES have had by working to expand that time and make that time really count. And it's exciting, I think, to see the district, Houston Independent School District, really, when they're looking at school improvement, they're talking about adding, I think 15 days to several schools throughout the district to really use that time, maybe hopefully more wisely, but also more effectively, to really impact our children and their learning and their futures, really kind of bringing into focus for them that relevance piece of their education and what happens. And that's what we try to help people do at Citizen Schools as well.
Scott Van Beck with A Challenge. We just heard Dr. Pedro Noguera, you had him over to talk about public schools, and he mentioned something that I thought was very interesting. He said, we cannot keep trying to educate kids without taking into consideration the social context, meeting their needs on a social, emotional, which is sort of what Michael Holthouse said, level. So tell me what you can share with us tonight about that.
Well, I think this has been a pervasive commentary, not only in Houston, but here tonight. And that is relationships matter, relevance matters to our kids. And, when I started in education, a dropout was defined as someone who had bad grades, missed school, had a bad home life. Not so today. When I left the high school principalship many years ago, I took a look at some of those dropouts, and those dropouts were coming to school, they're making A's and B's, came from solid homes, but they flat out sat in a class one day and decided, I'm not going to take this anymore. And, it's sort of like my friend Chris Barbick and I talked about one time. Chris leads the YES charter schools. I think everybody in this room knows what we need to do. We have to find the willpower to do it, and we've got the right people, I think, in like major positions. But it's really going to take all of us to kind of reach down deep and find the will to do what's right for a population of kid that is ever changing in the community of Houston.
Barbara Page, you work with young minority children, and you introduce them to probably a situation that they're not used to. Tell us about what you do and why you're doing it.
Well, MLT Houston really works with a lot of the kids who are not necessarily at risk, but who are actually doing well academically in school, but we want to make sure that they are actually prepared for their careers. And so we do provide a relevance opportunity for them in terms of getting involved with our corporate partners and learning leadership skills and other skills that employers need directly from the people who are involved in those kinds of activities now.
What are your thoughts, and anyone can answer this, about life skills curriculum? And one of the things that I noticed that a lot of kids don't have any manners. Should we be teaching them ethics? Should we be teaching them character leadership skills? Are those things that we should be doing in our schools?
I do it every day. The foundation is in kindergarten. And
foundation is kindergarten, that's right.
The foundation is in kindergarten. We do that every day. I relate what's happening in our classroom, their learning, to everyday life. And that is key. That is important. Not only that, but it's done through rigorous projects.
Right, right. Dr. Archie Blanchett, I know that Aldine got a major award, and you can tell us about the award. What did y'all do right in Aldine?
Well, it was the Broad Award for 2009, the Broad Foundation Award, and it afforded us to give scholarships up to $1 million to graduates in Aldine School District for this year. One of the things that we do right in Aldine is we make sure that we look at every individual child in the campus, and we tailor their educational needs in our curriculum, in our instruction, and we tailor it all the way through our programs. We don't have a cookie-cutter canned program for all of our children. We look at every one of them and satisfy them.
Thank you. Richard Farias is with Raúl Izaguirre School. Tell me what charter schools, I mean, there are good, let's face it, there are good charter schools and bad charter schools. Do you think charter schools, though, have helped public education, or in a way they hurt public education?
Absolutely, charter schools have helped the regular public school system.
Why?
Because a lot of what has happened is that a lot of the kids that were not doing well in the regular public school system are the ones that were attracted to charter schools. So the school districts themselves should be doing much better, because the charter schools, which are smaller and are able to provide much closer attention to each and every child, that's what these kids needed, and that's what they were not getting in the regular public school system. We can dance around this all day long, but the reality is that the public school system, high schools especially, are way too big. There is no way that these kids are going to get the kind of attention that they need, because the system is just too big. And one of the things that created charter schools, and certainly the Raúl Izaguirre Charter School, was the fact that the myth that parents don't care about their child's education, that is one of the things that drove me to start my own charter school, because that is absolutely incorrect. Parents do care, and we have one of the strongest parent components anywhere in this country.
So you're saying we need to engage them? With the Yes Charter Schools, do we need to engage parents differently?
Absolutely. I mean, I agree with you completely. I mean, no parent is sitting there saying, yeah, I don't want the best for my kid, right? I mean, we all know that parents want the best for their children. And I think what often happens is they get lost in the maze, and they get lost in the bureaucracy, and they don't know how, particularly if they don't have, look, the college application process is hard enough for somebody that's already gone to college, let alone somebody that has not had experience with that. And so at Yes Prep, the focus is on engaging those parents in a way that makes sense. And what that looks like, it might not look like, sitting in the back of the room cutting out gingerbread men every day, right? But it looks like supporting the school, supporting the students, and all working together towards the same mission, and that is to prepare those students for college graduation, right? And if we do that, the community gets behind it, and they get excited about it, the students get excited about it, it energizes our teachers. At the end of the day, that's what the community needs.
Patty, please let me finish.
Sure.
Okay, just one more minute. Parents must feel welcome to come to the schools, and that simply does not happen across the board. For most cases, especially for Latino parents, there's nobody there to greet them in their native tongue. Many of our people are monolingual in Spanish, so they can't even come to school and feel that they're even wanted. So, that problem has got to be corrected. If we really want to begin to change things, we need to do what we've been saying we should be doing all these years, and actually start doing it. And parental involvement, everybody knows, is absolutely necessary to help the child. But the last point that I wanted to make that I think is equally important is that while we have a lot of responsibility, and we look at the teacher, how important the teacher is, which obviously is absolutely correct, but what we're doing too often is letting the administrators slide, and they do not pay attention to what's going on in the classrooms enough for those teachers to go ahead and be put on a plan, more professional development, do whatever it takes for those teachers to do a better job in the classroom.
Michael Holthouse.
We have two examples. We have Yes Prep, top of the top. We have the Teacher of the Year. And it all comes down to what you were talking about with life skills. The family and the way we've set up our education system in America is that the schools teach academics, and our families are supposed to teach life skills and character, and those they're so important. The successful schools are those schools that weave those together, where they bring the life skills, they bring the kinds of character elements into the classroom and teach it with the academics side by side.
Mike Famber, do you do that at KIPP, which also highly recognized school?
We try to. I agree with what's been saying. You know, I think the challenge we face is that collectively we look at public education and public education reform as a kindergarten soccer game, where in mass at a scrum we run all to the ball, wherever the shiny new thing is. You know, let's all worry about pre-K, and then let's all worry about the high school dropout. Let's teach character. Let's work on parent involvement. Let's work on dual language. Instead of realizing that, as Michael just said, and as our friends here are saying, it's a collective sum of those parts. At the end of the day, it's great teaching and more of it with all those elements intertwined within. It's not easy, but that's the answer.
Gail Fallon?
I agree with Mike a lot. Of course, we do that often anyway. One of the things missing in reform is very often common sense. I mean, we sit there talking about pre-K and having children being able to compete. We know when we look at the psychological studies that children's basic personality is set by age 5, so we start pre-K at age 4. You know, we've lost the formative years. We talk about an achievement gap, and the problem is your middle and upper middle class is putting their kids in school at 18 months to 2 years, and the poor kid whose parent doesn't have the money comes in at age 4 maybe for half a day. That's not common sense. We know that we're losing kids 10th grade, you know, when they're 10th grade age. We start career awareness generally in 10th, 11th grade, 12th in some cases. We ought to be doing that in middle school so that we can explain to the child why he's taking algebra. You want to be a plumber? You better have algebra. You want to be a carpenter? You better have algebra. It's not just something we put in the curriculum to torture you. We have academic courses that we do with Houston Community. Well, it does to some of us, but, you know, we have career awareness courses. We have some great certificate courses at HCC. Do we give dual credit for those? Absolutely not. Just academic courses. What if we could tell a kid that you can come out in 2 years with a certificate that'll get you a high-paying job? You think he might stay in school? It might actually be relevant to him to do it, but we don't do that.
Kelly Frells with Center for Houston's Future.
Over the years, I've heard people talk about the education of those children. Now, we've all heard it in the community. I see a lot of head shaking here. And what that means is I'm going to take care of my kid, but I don't care about those kids. And what I've heard recently, particularly in the business community, is let's educate our children. And I see more and more of that being discussed. And I think on a big picture basis, we need to address that issue. And then I think the legislative fix would be a whole lot easier. I think funding and resource allocation would be a whole lot easier if the whole community supported educating our children.
Okay, thank you. Larry Payne?
Let me just pick up on Kelly's piece because I think he really hit the nail on the head. If you go back to your premise, Houston's public urban education crisis, if we really define that we have a true crisis, the word I have not heard is that famous phrase, the fierce urgency of now. If we, in fact, understand that the children we have, the new unempowered majority, that's exactly what they are, the new unempowered majority, if we saw them as the majority, understood what it meant to be the majority, understood what that 90% HISD student body, children of color, who we used to call minorities, in fact are no longer minorities. They are the future of all of us. It has to be what Kelly was saying, that we can't deal with that phrase anymore, those are not my children, that we heard many times across this community. The I and me and the we and us people got to get together. We have to understand that this is our future as we keep saying it. If we really embrace the new unempowered majority, what would it take as a community? The time, the talent, the treasure to do whatever it took to educate the new unempowered majority. The other piece that we've heard about is the schools. We've heard about parents. We haven't said much about community. Unless we engage the whole community in a way we did in the past, sometimes the past can inform both the present and the future. The schools are all resegregated again. When the schools were all resegregated in the past, the community element, that third important element of the school, of the parents,
the community in local parentis, that famous Latin phrase, in place of a parent. We had every adult involved with every child and took responsibility for those children. We need to bring that sense of community involvement, including the churches. When I say church, parish, temple, synagogue, and mosque, back into the equation so we can get the character education, so we can get those pieces that we need and make it a whole community effort once again as we did in the past. As many of us in this room who went to segregated schools, poor segregated schools, got a great education. I'll put my poor segregated school education against anyone's education, but I had the whole community helping me succeed.
Thank you, Dr. Larry Payne. And now Dr. McNeil from Rice University.
Well, follow up on, I can't really follow Larry Payne, but in our commitment at Rice has been teacher development. The Center for Education was founded in 1988, and I know a number of you in the room have been supportive or involved. And we have seen, if we believe the teacher is the key to children's learning, then the way we have approached that issue is to involve the whole community in long-term teacher development, the teaching of writing, elementary science, middle school science, our wonderful high school model lab for science teachers out at Lee when Steve was principal there, with a great deal of corporate support, foundation support, creating programs for teachers, long-term learning, including year-long seminars in the teaching of writing in early childhood, early literacy. And if the whole community doesn't invest in teachers, then we are placing a very unreasonable burden on teachers, and we're failing to do what all of the other industrial countries do, which is make learning a part of teachers' work day, work week. That is a major gap between what the U.S. public schools do and what other countries do. And our view of teacher learning is that it has to include not just the subject, but the way children learn and the cultures of the children and their families.
And definitely from the emails that I've gotten, teachers are not feeling supported right now for some reason. Scott Hawksburg, State Representative.
And I'm also glad I didn't have to follow Larry directly. So, we could have, I've been doing this for 18 years, and we could have had this discussion 18 years ago. I've participated in discussions like this 18 years ago. We've known about solutions. Project Grad has been up and running for years. It's not been replicated in any huge way. We have dropout recovery schools that have started. They've not been replicated all over the state. I think what we've lacked in this amount of time and what we still lack is a commitment to solve this problem instead of just manage it. And I think too many times we walk away pleased with ourselves because the numbers come out right and there aren't that many failing schools and we're getting an award or this award or we're not on the bad list. And that's good enough. And then it turns out we set the standards for those lists by what we're achieving. So it's a big circle. And it does come down to political questions, too. It's not just the community, but we make decisions. And I'll be partisan since we're on the AfterShow. We made a decision in this state. We had $4 billion in surplus per year we were taking in. And instead of expanding pre-K, or instead of growing Project Grad, or instead of growing charter schools or adding dropout recovery schools, we decided to give it back because the leadership said it's more important that we give property tax breaks to not my constituents than it is to do any of the things that have been talked about in the last hour and a half. And until we decide that this is more important than that, we can come back here 18 years later and we're going to still have the same discussion.
Do you want to respond to that?
Sure. Where would we be now if we didn't have that extra $4 billion? The other part, and I agree with Scott in that we need to focus on what works and do less of what doesn't work. We haven't done that. We pile things on, okay? Part of House Bill 3 was looking at efficiency of school districts. That means who gets the best performance for the best cost. Because we spend $52 billion a year in Texas on public education. And there's a lot of better things we could be doing with that money in public education. And there are a lot of representatives of the good programs that we need to do more of. And I'll agree with Scott there. We need to do more of the good things. There was a study on the highest performing school systems in the world by the McKinsey Company. and they came at the difference between the high-performing school systems and all the others was three things: teachers, teachers, and teachers. It's where you get them, how you train them, and how you lead them. And lowering the student-teacher ratio from 23-1 to 15-1 at best gives you an 8% increase in student achievement. An effective teacher is worth 15%. So having an effective teacher 3 years in a row is going to close that gap. And that's where we need to be. And that's where we need to go. And that's where we need to continue developing our teachers, getting better sources.
And I wasn't criticizing my friend Rob. That was not. I mean, he's a trooper, and so even though we're on opposite sides,
wasn't taken.
But there's some other folks that I don't think.
I'm glad you're making friends now. This is a good thing. We have a retired teacher, and I want to hear from you as to what it was like when you were teaching, and what would you like to see? What do teachers need to do their job better?
I taught 29 years, specifically special ed for the emotionally disturbed. And I was listening about life skills. We did teach manners and etiquette. And our kids did not know even to shake a hand, look into one's eye, say thank you. So that was very important. I would like to see now a lot of the solution as possibly having more people in the classroom, more teachers, teacher assistants, and peer tutors. I think that's very valuable. My kids loved another peer coming in and working with them. Sometimes facilitated their learning better than a teacher.
I mean, people like who are retired, or are you talking professional tutors? Or
just other students.
Other students.
Just peers.
Right here. You have a comment?
Yes, I think one specific solution that we could begin now is to develop programming for workforce education all the way down to the elementary level. I heard her say earlier that at 3rd and 4th grade, kids weren't able to read. They were stigmatized and made fun of. And in my experience, that's when they start thinking about dropping out. Years ago, I worked in higher education. At that time, in 2000, the legislature funded the closing the gaps. By 2015, we're not going to meet that goal. And if we could start getting that workforce education programming down to the elementary level so that kids can begin seeing the relevance, back to relevance, of why they're in school and what they're doing and why they're doing it, I think it would definitely help decrease the dropout rate and provide an occupation and a skill for them later on.
What I've heard from educators, too, is that, actually consultants, that kids are learning completely differently now than when we were learning. They don't learn the way we do. They have access to technology I can't figure out and my 5-year-old can figure out. So are we finding ourselves in a transition where things are changed, sort of like now we have a digital revolution that we are just kind of catching up, we're playing catch up? And if we are, what are some of the things that we need to do differently and how we teach kids? And I think maybe Kip and Yes, go ahead.
I was just saying, I think that's a real dangerous path to walk down. I mean, we said it time and time again. We know what it takes. It takes really good teachers, right, with a lot of time in the classroom, with a really solid mission to get the job done, right? We know that that's what it is. Technology is awesome, but it's always just going to enhance that. It's never going to replace it, right? And I think we can talk a lot about families and parents, and we can talk about all these different things. At the end of the day, an effective school is the same thing as any effective, company or business or any other industry, right? It's the right people doing the right thing, right, with the right mission, right? And there's so many good examples of this across the state, particularly in Houston. I mean, Houston is a hub. What KIP's doing, schools and HISD are doing, what Yes Prep is doing, Harmony, or Yulia Zagari. There's so many good examples. We need to bottle those up. We need to study them. We need to share those best practices, and then just do it. We say it's not science. It's just really, really hard.
Oh, sorry. Lori Vetters?
Look, for example, Port Houston and HISD. Their kids are low income. They have all the issues that we're talking about. They're at 96% reading level. They're at 98% math level. They're in the high 90s in science. It's about, in that school, leadership. It's about the fact that they've taken in a number of Teach for America teachers, and they've put them all together. So they looked at alternative teaching, and they have great leadership there. Look at what they're doing at KIPP, Teach for America. Look at Yes, the head of Teach for America, looking at alternative paths for bringing in teachers. I think we really have to look at holding our schools of education to higher standards.
Let's talk about schools of education, higher standards. Because one thing I'm hearing is that we are not, that our schools, our colleges are not preparing, especially in class management skills, our teachers.
Well, you know, we don't have a class in class management and teacher preparation. Teacher preparation and alternative certification have kind of taken over the classroom. So consequently, the teaching is really, the preparation of teachers is down to a minimum. And we do, for example, at the University of Houston, we have started a math and science teacher program. So that's been very helpful. But indeed, you know, what we need to do is focus more on teacher education. We don't have the funding, we don't have the political support to develop those areas. I mean, I'm glad to see that the Teacher of the Year here is from the University of Houston. So I'm really waiting to see what that HISD study is going to show on which university produces the best teachers. I think the University of Houston has made a great effort to do that. We just don't have the resources, and the support. And most colleges, I think, have taken a hit because we've contracted out teacher development. We've contracted out teacher certification to anyone who wants to set up a shop somewhere and do teacher certification.
That's something to take into consideration. Dr. Page.
Earlier you asked me a question about accountability. And I think that we need to hold ourselves accountability. That goes for every citizen in Houston. I'm agonized about the point that we can have a school board election in Houston and 15% of the voters turn out. That means 85% of the citizens are saying, we have no role in this. We're not going to be involved at all in the decisions that are being made. Many of the solutions that you've talked about tonight are going to take place or not take place based on the kinds of policies that are enacted by the school board. Yet, we treat this important organization as if it's not important. If we do nothing else as a result of tonight's meeting, we should make sure that we are involved in the school board election. I wanted to ask, and I don't think I will, how many of you involved yourself in school board elections in the last school board election? How many of you actually voted? How many of you actually know who your school board representative is? So this is a very important determinant, and I think that's the place where we need to start. We're fortunate we have great men and women on our school boards, and they need our support.
I want to go back to the point.
Larry Payne.
Go back to the point about teacher preparation. Spent a little time at U of H, too, at Institute for Urban Education and Teacher Training and Preparation. And the thing I think I've learned from teachers is the question of the will and the wanna. If you have the will and the wanna to be with the population of students in the part of town in which you're teaching, not expecting and waiting for a different group of children to come through the door, but the ones you have, the ones you are given every day, we can teach you the skills. We can teach you every skill on how to be and become the best teacher and move you up the ladder to even become a master teacher. But if you don't have the will and the wanna and are comfortable with the population of students in the neighborhood, in the community that you're sitting in and working in, nothing matters. And that factor is really an important factor in the urban education setting.
I have a question from a viewer. What are the major obstacles that prevent educators from applying what works at charter schools like Yes Prep to the public school system? Who wants to take that?
I'm not sure that we prepare teachers for the front line. And I think that, just takes individuals who are, as Larry said, willing to work in those communities, who come in and guess what? We're not going to work in a suburban that's 90% white anymore because they don't exist. But we don't train for the front line. It's best to bring them in and prepare them. I mean, our faculty are sometimes that's a real challenge for them. Now, we have moved into technology and we have moved into content areas like math and science, and that's the direction that we should be going.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry the time is up, but please go ahead. We're not on YouTube anymore, but please, we all want to hear.
I just want to say that a lot of the students that are enrolled in the schools where we work, which are 5 feeder systems in HISD, and I wish it were more in the state of Texas. It is more in the country, but in the state of Texas, it's in Houston, are engaged in some of the same programs that I see kids from Yes and KIP coming to, and those are made possible by really strong university partnerships. We'll have 1,400 kids from inner city, very poor high schools going to universities this summer doing 4 weeks of academic coursework while they explore careers, which gives relevance to the whole piece that they're going back to their high schools to engage in. So that's why we see the results that we do in lower dropout rates, in higher graduation rates, in better college going rates, and in college success rates from these very low income, comprehensive big high schools. Our big high schools can be successful if they are given the right resources, the right engagement of the community, higher ed, and starting with the kids and the parents early when they're in elementary school and preschool.
Thank you all. I'm sorry, we've run out of time, but you can come talk to me afterwards.